Revelation 7, the seal of God in the sealing time of the 144,000. Awful is his work, fearful is his mission. Adjuncts of the seal of God. Much in respect to Revelation 7 is poorly perceived, for the fact is Ezekiel 9 equals the last ministration of the seal of God. But what is to be noted, there are many discoveries by five agendas about eternal righteousness and the seal of God of Revelation 7. These are summarized as adjuncts to Revelation 7. But then why would Sister White say the seal of God in the sealing time with its bearing to the Day of Atonement was focused in its fullest respect to Laodicea? Why did Sister White say the closing work for and not of or by, but for the church in the sealing time of the 144,000? Why did she set forth Revelation 7 in relation to the sealing time of the 144 and Laodicea equals 3T266? And then why would she describe the third angel? Fearful is his work, awful is his mission. Was the reason why she trembled was because the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies would be perceived, and was this a huge attempt by Satan in the sealing time of the 144 to be completely ineffective? Okay, what does the Alpha and the Omega of Christ have to do in the sealing time, as is distinct to the fact there is such a thing as being sealed in Revelation 7? The fact is the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies is contrary to the first angel's warning, and since it is not resolved by Laodicea, what exactly does that mean for the laity? Fearful is his work, awful is his mission. Which is to what? Separate wheat from tares, was Matthew 13:25-30. Concerning the sealing time, these things should engross the whole mind, the whole attention, quote unquote. So, can anyone suggest why do you have today the massive emphasis of the love gospel in Laodicea? Why is there the distinct focus on humility and the love? Answer, well, consider what is highly pertinent and appropriate to Revelation 7, which is how Paul relates to the purpose of the sealing time of the 144, which is set out in 2 Thessalonians 2:10. Even him, whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. Everyone in Laodicea will respond, we are the remnant church, we have the truth. Okay, good. And yet, how do you explain before God that your 27 fundamentals equals the chief doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church? And that's one thing. And why do you, Laodiceans, not realize this fact annuls that comment? We have the truth? But then does God wish you to have no idea the deception of the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies of the fundamentals 2 and 4 exists? And then what? Well, God said there's a final sifting, the wheat from the tares in the sealing time of the 144. The kingdoms of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Fearful is his work, awful is his mission. He is the angel that is to select the wheat from the tares, and seal or bind the wheat for the heavenly garner. These things should engross the whole mind, the whole attention. So sowing tares amongst the wheat, as it turns out, is the Alpha and the Omega deadly heresies. And it can be concluded the awful work of the first angel, and fearful is his mission, which should do what? Engross your whole attention in the sealing time? Seems to be the very plain, clear language, but who today believes that? So much for today. So much for staying with the ship. The ship is going through? Question mark. Right? The sealing time? How long does this last? Revelation 7, 1-3. I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. What prophetic event tells you the sealing time has closed? Answer: fully ended by the time of the 5th trumpet of the first woe. Revelation 9, 4-6. When did the sealing time of the 144th commence? Answer: after the Kairoi, times of the nations closed, equals Luke 21:24, in 1980. This correlates with Christ's closing ministration as great high priest on the final atonement, which is for the individual in the court. See Leviticus 16 and Ezekiel 9:4. What also occurred will be noted shortly. Why is Laodicea the focus of Sister White's counsel? Answer: Laodicea was given a sacred trust. The unique sanctuary doctrine, equals Daniel 8:14, equals John 4:22. The fact is, today is the last generation. The Sabbath is not a unique doctrine. See this link here. Why is it not so stated in Revelation 7 or Revelation 14:1 or even Ezekiel 9? The fact is, Daniel 8:14 equals the sanctuary doctrine, captures the fullest sense of John 4:22 and Ezekiel 9, and confirms the uniqueness of the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary on the Day of Atonement, and why the focus is now in the last ministration for individuals. The sealing time commencement is relevant to what she said in the Tasmanian camp meeting of 1896. My mind was carried to the future when the signal will be given, go ye out. What signal? Out of what? Why is that relevant to the sealing time of the 144? The answer is the fulfillment of Luke 21:24. What happens if you ignore the signal and remain lukewarm? The condition of Laodicea? He who made said that condition was miserable, poor, blind, and naked. Does that sound like tares? But again, if the sealing time really is about the first angel's warning and the Alpha and the Omega deadly heresies, that she trembled. Answer: has to be. Actually, God has said it all out in Revelation 13, that eternal righteousness of Christ is entirely related to the seal of God and the testimony of he who made. The eternal righteousness of Christ equals, and Revelation 13:8 and John 1:1 and 2 Timothy 1:9 establishes his eternal righteousness and why he is the Alpha. Otherwise, Revelation 13:8 is a nonsensical in respect to the first and second beasts of that very chapter. When the eternal righteousness of Christ, who is the Alpha and the Omega, equals Revelation 22:13 and 16, is placed into all serious considerations, equals the whole attention with the first angel's warning, and then compared with Revelation 14:1, equals those cleansed and sealed in the sealing time, you begin to get the answers why she was extremely concerned the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies would be received to the point she trembled. What really did Laodicea lose out on? He who made said Laodicea spewed. Revelation 3:16. Was it that the seal of God in the sealing time was entirely related to the eternal righteousness of Christ and the final atonement, and remains entirely focused to the first angel's warning, which is about the Godhead? First angel should engross the whole mind and attention. How does heaven summarize the rejection that Christ was not also an eternal God, but the eternal Son, fundamental number 4, or the Trinity, fundamental 2? Answer: Matthew 12:31 is the only answer, and Laodicea, corporate body, on behalf of the laity, committed the unpardonable sin by insulting he who made, how? With fundamentals 2 and 4, and denying the first angel's warning. See this link. But then, can God seal anyone in unrighteousness? That is, the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies equals sealed in unrighteousness? Absolutely not. Awful is his work, fearful is his mission, right? The signal? That in 1896 at the Tasmanian camp meeting was the strange out of context statement. My mind was carried to the future when the signal would be given. The commencement of the sealing time of the 144,000 was the prophetic event central to Luke 21:24. No one can say Laodicea was never alerted. They were. And these 2 points here. Was this why she said for frequent appearance, study Luke chapter 21? When that event transpired in respect to the times of the nations, this was the signal led to the very end times, that the kairoi, or probationary times of the nations, had closed, and from the heavenly sanctuary perspective of the final atonement included the sealing time of Revelation 7 and the 144? Right? Here it is. She said, study Luke 21 and read the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. Those familiar with the typology of the sanctuary service know there are 3 ministrations on the Day of Atonement, with the first commencing in the most holy place, followed by the second in the holy place, was for the nations and corporate churches, and the last ministration in the court, a ministration for the individual, equals Ezekiel 9 and Revelation 7. And the court is where? Answer, the earth, not the most holy place of the holy place. Laodicea has remained in theological turmoil over Daniel 8:14 with the cleansing of the sanctuary and the investigative judgment. Glacier View Committee is the classic example of the case in point. But the unthinkable occurred at the General Conference session of 1980, and the 27 fundamental beliefs with fundamentals 2 and 4 equals the central doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. In the meantime, Laodicea has achieved a pretty good patch-up job to allay all fears, concerns of the rank and file, and there is no question elders and padres are in lockstep with the central doctrine of the RCC. And God, the Eternal Son, fundamental number 4, equals the Omega of heresies. The patch-up is leveraged with the Lerv gospel and the primary objective of outreach and internal doctrinal harmony, and this very effective to restrain the laity from leaving or doubting the elders or padres. But regardless, the same Lerv gospel is given by all the other churches who advance the triune Godhead and God the Eternal Son, fundamental number 4. Just prior to the 27 fundamentals in 1980, Laodicea were embarrassed continually by evangelical leadership since the 1950s, who said the investigative judgment was mumbo-jumbo. And so the conclusion was Laodicea was a cult. And Laodicea were not real Christians, because evangelicals said Laodicea lost their way with the error of Daniel 8:14 equals the investigative judgment. They conclude the investigative judgment was a colossal, face-saving phenomenon, to quote Dr. Barnhouse. While the IJ is false construct because of John 5:24, the sanctuary doctrine is not. Why? For the simple reason John 4:22 exists. But then, at the same time of the fulfillment of Luke 21:24, what did Laodicea do? Oh, yes. It was the very same year, even to the month, in 1980, when the General Conference voted in Dallas, Texas, the fundamentals 2 and 4 equals the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies. The conference called a special meeting at Glacier over the sanctuary doctrine in Daniel 8:14, and the answer to the predicament, they defrocked Dr. Ford, lancing the theological wound to speak. Why? To be spiritual chums of the other fallen churches. Hey, look at us. We are real loving Christians, which is what the Lerv gospel is all about. But then an amazing supernatural event occurred in 1980. What? When the 27 fundamentals becoming official doctrine and fundamentals 2 and 4, which is the central doctrine. of the little horn became official doctrine because fundamentals 2 and 4, what more evidence do you require? Anyone care to respond? There was no greater spiritual mischief, and Laodicea betrayed her sacred trust. Everyone in Laodicea waved the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies through as kosher Orthodox doctrine, regardless as to whether the Roman Catholic Church equals purple woman was the originating author, and that woman is utterly abhorrent to God. But, of course, not to Laodicea, right? It's Baal worship revisited. There's no wriggle room. Then began the shaking. But worse, many who separated from Laodicea either maintained fundamentals number 2 equals Trinity, while others set their hearts against that with the Arian version equals God had a son who emanated or was born in eternity, or 3 in eternity, which is the flip side of the coin of the Trinity equals fundamentals number 2. And in the process, astonishingly, these ministries idolize God the Eternal Son equals fundamentals 4 and do not have a Mary Lou clue. But regardless of the Alpha and Omega deadly heresies is ever to be of any concern, right? It is reasoned Laodicea likes to remind everyone, hey guys, we just don't mess with the 4th commandment, right? The tragedy is the Omega of deadly heresies exists in Laodicea and is exhorted from the pulpits, from lips of clay to this very day. But few to this day even perceive how deadly is the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies, especially in the closing work for the church in the sealing time of the 144. Comment. So how does God seal anyone in heresy when God's people are to be the pillar in the ground of truth, yet preach the Omega of deadly heresies? Right? The main doctrine of the Scarlet Woman surely has no basis for the seal of God. Otherwise, she was wrongly judged. Right? Laodicea acknowledged the RCC viewpoint of the doctrine of God, which is the central doctrine of the Catholic faith. See here, these are fundamentals 2 and 4. And so Laodicea have never looked back, let alone realize they insulted he who made in the process. And so Laodicea progressed to the point of miserable, poor, blind, and naked. And today, even though they claim to be joyful with an ever-growing church family, are infatuated with the love gospel, but in the process have annulled the first angel's warning. All because of what? Yep, the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies was never resolved to this day by Laodicea. And guess what is installed? This insidious heresy has eased the way for the spiritual calamity of Isaiah 2, and Laodicea will bow to the law of one. Why? Laodicea say there is one God. Fundamental 2. And there will be no trouble accepting the all-prevailing unity consciousness because they are spiritual chums. Fearful is his work, also is his mission. Question mark. The sealing time of the 144? John 4:22 and the first angel's warning? John 4:22 is saying Protestant churches are not the remnant of the woman's seed due to the antitypical fulfillment of the 6th feast. Why? He who made said, salvation is of the Jews. And it is so easy to realize when you see the real issue of John 4:22, the theological bun fight the evangelicals had and still have with Laodicea, and no one is the wiser. But the matter of the first angel's warning equals the Godhead of John 1:1 equals Revelation 7, the seal of God, are critical adjuncts in the sealing time because of John 4:22. And what is important is a basic understanding of the 6th feast. And regarding the 6th feast, Protestants who say they believe the 4 spring feasts are as a shadow and have their antitypical fulfillment, then to have that belief harmonizing with John 4:22, it's hypocritical to believe the last 3 fall feasts are not a shadow fulfillment as well, right? And if they don't, only proves the evangelical do not conform to the dictum Jesus stated in John 4:22, right? Now notice something else. Why does John 4:22 equals the sealing of God in the sealing time of the 144,000 Revelation 7. Laodicea holds a very special connection when it came to end-time events. How? Laodicea were born from prophecy, Daniel 8:14. And this answers the question stupid evangelicals have with Laodicea. Actually, it is the high level of ignorant of the sacred trust. Laodicea was given equals born from prophecy and given much light, and the uniqueness of baptism is John 4:22 equals the sanctuary doctrine, and yet evangelical Baptists forget why they existed prior to Laodicea. No denying they had light. God said, Proverbs 4:18 rules. Fact is, evangelicals emerged from theological protest and not from the antitypical Day of Atonement equals the sixth feast. This is essential to understand, or he who made in John 4:22 is lying. Protestants and evangelicals need to be informed regarding all their attacks against Laodicea are out of biblical context. In light of John 4:22 and the sixth feast, the Day of Atonement, even Laodicea needs to be reminded. But guess what? The attacks by the evangelicals on Laodicea were not centered on Sister White. Well, stupid is as stupid does. For those queasy, piqued, displeased, bothered, hurt, peeved at that comment, would you care to explain Jeremiah 5, which says, declare this in the house of Jacob and publish it in Judah, saying, hear now this, O foolish people and without understanding, which have eyes and see not, which have ears and hear not. Then explain why the Greek for foolish equals the 10 virgins equals moron. Then explain why the foolish virgins equals morons. The 10 virgins get one last opportunity to respond at midnight. It's in the context of Revelation 17, 16, and 18, and the fall, destruction of the RCC. And then the morons have to deal with their spiritual hangover, which is nothing other than sipping from the golden cup, the wine of Babylon, and drank deeply the omega of deadly heresies. Jeremiah 51:7 equals Revelation 14:8. And mind you, Revelation 14:8 follows immediately after the first angel's warning, which is all about the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies. Not the Sabbath. And the only antidote to moronic stupidity is to grasp why Christ said, I am Alpha and Omega, equals Revelation 22:13-16, and why he appears specifically associated with eternal righteousness in Revelation 13:8, which is Revelation 13:8 equals the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world equals eternal righteousness of he who made. But wait, there's more. Verse 9 is in context of the first and second beasts of the 1290 days of Revelation 13. And he who made sets out the last appeal to who? Answer. If any man have an ear, let him hear. Any man, Laodicea, no longer the focus. That is an experiential relationship of listening to God, right? Got that sorted? Okay, moving on. God said Daniel 8:14 was centered on the sixth feast, not Sister White. Hiram Edson's vision in the cornfield was valid even though it couldn't be properly explained back then, meaning the holy place ministration equals the corporate agenda, and then the movement is to the sixth feast, antitypical Day of Atonement, which can now be properly explained and articulated without EGW. This doctrine was the major failing of Glacier View's committee, whose inquisitorial response to Dr. Ford failed Laodicea in many ways. Astonishingly, the committee guide was the 27 fundamentals, not the Bible. And to make matters worse, they defrocked Ford. And why? Well, it's plain. It was all because Laodicea could not articulate John 4:22 in light of Daniel 8:14 and still cannot. Why? Fundamentals 2 and 4 is the fruitage of contradiction of the first angel's warning and is coupled with a subtle denial of John 4:22, the sanctuary doctrine, regardless of what they all say even today. The other complication that makes matters actually far worse was Ford also was given to the belief of the triune Godhead of fundamentals, and includes God the Eternal Son, fundamental number 4. Keep in mind, Laodicea still have not resolved Daniel 8:13. Seems they had an opportunity at Glacier, fumbled the ball, the rest is history. But then, as it is, here is the other side of the coin. Protestants defend Japhet as a nation apart from the religious destiny matter, saying that they have a right to defend their heritage from Abraham. God counters with Genesis 9:27 equals the event of 1948, and that wasn't a restoration. As to maps of the land space, even that is no longer valid after the 70 weeks of Daniel 9, and also with what Jesus proclaimed in Matthew 23:38 about the house. Your house is left unto you desolate. And guess what? That means in respect to Revelation 7. Well, the only conclusion is that Revelation 7 is not about the literal ethnicity of 12 tribes. Otherwise, he who made is lying again in Matthew 23:38. Paul confirmed with Galatians 3:28-29 and 1 Corinthians 15:50, flesh and blood does not inherit what? 1952. The 1952 Bible Conference is worth mentioning. Laodicea were alerted to the events of 1948 and wrote up some information to keep an eye on, and then promptly went back to sleep. Why? Laodicea ignored the counsel of Sister White in Counsels to Writers and Editors. She said, study Luke 21. God was gracious. How? Laodicea was warned in the second Sabbath School Quarterly of 1980, the fulfillment of Luke 21. Today, 2025, Laodicea talk and preach the modern sayings using the euphemisms like church, family, the love of God, and humility. But what about the third angel? Awful is his work, fearful is his mission. Today, there is very strong love emphasis, and all who believe in Jesus are church family. This love is very subtle because it is the very early manifestations of the eighth king's intrigue, and it's to be noted that in Revelation 12 and 13 equals Isaiah 2 and the Lucy fear era of unity consciousness, the law of one. Revelation 13 is the Lucy fear age, Luciferian. Paul told Timothy the church of Jesus Christ is the pillar and the ground of truth. 1 Timothy 3:15, and then, as you may well know by now, Laodicea insists the 144 are the great multitude of Revelation 7. Even those who stand on the Mount Zion by way of the Triune Trinity, fundamental 2, and God the Eternal Son, fundamentals 4. Well, that, as you can realize, is an impossibility. The great multitude existence is based on the gospel of the kingdom and righteousness by faith, whereas God sets out the specifics of the seal of God equals Ezekiel 9, Revelation 3:12, 14:1, etc. If not sealed in the sealing time, then what's left? Answer, Revelation 20, verse 4. The seal of God equals Revelation 9. Presents what seems to be an inconceivable scenario as described in 3T 266 and 7, and reference to the 144, and then they are the teachers of eternal righteousness equals the dew that distills as rain, since they received the seal of God equals eternal righteousness. They have the genuine Alpha and Omega testimony of Jesus, and it is mindful to note everyone knows the book of Revelation opens and closes with the picture of he who made equals who states he is the Alpha and the Omega, and that is especially poignant in the entire context of Revelation 12, 13, and the three angels' messages of Revelation 14. The great multitude defined in Revelation 20, verse 4, clearly states what seems to be an error. They pay with their lives and be bedded. They don't lose heaven. It's that they were not sealed in the sealing time and are not the 144. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. For those who disbelieve, review the last portion of Revelation 12:17. Then keep in mind the Sabbath is not and cannot be the seal of God. The seal of God includes the name of two fathers and is described in discussion of Revelation 14:1. And is furthermore, it's divinely authorized in Revelation 3:12. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, and which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from God, and I will write upon him my new name. The seal of God. The work of the first and third angel is to what? Separates the wheat from the tares, and fearful is his work, awful is his mission. Are you hanging out with tares? Actually, here's what she said. I then saw the third angel, said Mike, accompanying angel, fearful is his work, awful is his mission. He is the angel that is to select the wheat from the tares and seal or bind the wheat for the heavenly garner. These things should engross the whole mind, the whole attention. Who of you are to say the above is not Ezekiel 9? Why has it not engrossed the whole mind, the whole attention? To be ignorant is to be literally wretched, poor, and blind and naked. This is the present predicament of Laodicea as stated by God. And Laodicea has a massive problem of Laodicea with the fundamentals 2 and 4 doctrine of the purple lady, and with their love emphasis, and not to realize Laodicea by fundamentals 2 and 4 are insulting Jesus Christ, whose orders for the awake in the church is go ye out to a meeting of him, which in context is in days of the sealing time of the 144. If not, explain why she said, fearful is his work, awful is his mission. Many respond with love response, we are all sinners from Adam to the present time, blah, blah. Trying to justify the Lerv gospel. Fact is, by the time the events of Revelation 13 commence, those who advance the Lerv, join the chorus of unity consciousness, won't have a moral leg to stand on. Why? Because the Lerv gospel equals unity consciousness. Then there are those who experienced an euphoric awareness of a euphoric spiritual force of righteousness after a season of prayer and fasting, etc. Yes, this has a form of exalting Jesus, but doesn't do what? He tells those in Laodicea, his church, to do at the end. Come out of her, my people. Revelation 7, Adjuncts of the Seal of God. The Adjuncts of the Seal of God is now presented in summary form, which deals with much truth that has unfolded throughout the years here at 5agendas.com. Summary of the insights discovered is now set out, and it is not a short list. All adjuncts are in respect to the eternal righteousness of he who made. Eternal righteousness of he who made equals Revelation 13:8 is connected in the many pieces of Scripture. New Jerusalem city, two fathers, equals John 1:1. The key of David, Revelation 14:1. Final 5 agendas has fully resolved the alpha and the omega of deadly heresies, and why this heresy is simultaneous attack to annul Ezekiel 9 and the final atonement and the first angel and John 1:1. The 5 prerequisites of Melchizedek destroys God, the eternal Son heresy. Christ, who is the Alpha and the Omega, equals first angel, destroys knowledge falsely so called, so fullness of the Godhead bodily at incarnation and resurrection in Omega sonship exposes Docetism. The question of Daniel 8:13 leads the escaped remnant of Revelation 12:17 and the completion of the final atonement. Cleanse lips, Isaiah 6. Church extension of Christ's body filling the universe, and that at all points refutes the pantheistic teaching of sparks of own kindling and collective consciousness. Kingdom of God within you is elos within upon baptism and not pantheistic consciousness at birth. Mysticisms appeal to philosophy refuted in Colossians 2. One God refuted in Genesis 1:26 and refuted in Deuteronomy 6:4. John 1:1 explains Deuteronomy 6:4. The one God is refuted equals Mark 12:35. Soul ascends to universe refuted by Ecclesiastes 3:19-21. Resurrection matrix proven in Job 19:25-27. The omega point and new sphere equals unity consciousness. The cleansing and sealing equals cleansing of lips of clay from the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies. Genesis 9:27 and the fig tree parable of Luke 21. The validity of the apotalismatic application of Daniel 12 equals the 1260, the 1290, and the 1335 literal days from the type, when the type duration was the transgression of desolation, Daniel 8. Revelation 13 equals Matthew 24:15, which is 1,290 literal days, equals the first beast, the 1260, the second beast, plus the 30 additional days, plus the 45 additional days, unto Har Moed, or Mount of the Congregation, equals Revelation 16. Matthew 24:15 equals 1290 literal days, antitypical abomination of desolation. Daniel 8:13 equals until when, Admate, 554 AD plus 1290 equals 1844. Five fallen kings, Revelation 17, the defining of the 10:10 scenario, an insight not present in any church today. The 10:10 scenario of the 10 horns and crowns, and the summary of the beast via the great red dragon of Revelation 12. The role of Arianism and Triune Trinity doctrine within the context of those 10 successive kingdoms. The clearly defined transitions from Daniel 11:36 up to Daniel 11:45. A clearly defined understanding of the different symbolisms in relation to the 7 heads, 10 horns, and 10 crowns as depicted in Revelation 12, 13, and 17. The beast being properly identified in relation to Zechariah 8:23. The emergence of the little horn from the Greek part of Italy equals Magna Graecia. The little horn constitutes 7 scarlet emperors, not popes. And the 8th king that emerges is diverse, since he is Luciferian. Introvertive and extrovertive mystical experiences of Satan's manifestations on earth in the form of unity consciousness, knowledge falsely so called. That eternal Godhead constituted 2 separate anthropomorphic beings in John 1:1, and not a state of universal consciousness. Alpha and Omega, Revelation 13:8 equals eternal righteousness, equals Revelation 7:14, 6-7, and Ezekiel 9. Zechariah 3, engrave the engraving, that is, the equals a uniquely begotten, B, men of wonder. Revelation 4 and 5, the pictorial of the Alpha and the Omega of he who made, the 2-in-1 being. Seal of God, Ezekiel 9, Revelation 14:1, John 1:1, 2 divines, 2 fathers' names sealing. Isaiah 9:6-7 explains why he who made is the everlasting Father, the Alpha scenario, and Son is given, Omega incarnate. The Great Pyramid and the relationship of the 5 agendas of the sanctuary doctrine. Isaiah 2 and the 3rd temple overrules Sister White in early writings, page 75. Oppressive law equals the 7 Noahides. The root failure of 1888, the Arian Godhead of Wagner and Jones. The word allos in relation to exposing the Triune Trinity and Fundamentals 2. The links of the Eternal Son to Neoplatonism based on the Nicene Creed itself. The ignominy that all churches' statements of belief carry the Eternal Son doctrine and the Triune Trinity doctrine. Colossians 2 stops the Gnostic accusation that Catholic Church Fathers threw out valid books in the 3rd century when the Marcion controversy struck. God's true matrix of bodily resurrection, Job 19:25-27, as opposed to soul immortality, equals Satan's lie to Eve. The 5 agendas of the sanctuary verses the incomplete E.G. White view, the change in the first angel's message after the fulfillment of Luke 21:24 reverts to John 1:1. Mark of the beast is not a Sunday law, but the mark of so-called Messiah Beni David. This involves the 7 Noahide laws whose underlying theme is the false interpretation of the Shema of Deuteronomy 6:4. This false interpretation is to be carried on the right hand and forehead as stipulated in Deuteronomy 6:8 and Revelation 13:16. The correct understanding of the words of, for one, Echad and Yakid, and the relation to the Shema, as well as to Genesis statement of the man and woman being one, equals Echad, as well as the understanding of the word Yakid in relation to Abraham's only literal son of the promise, Isaac. How Jesus used Mark 12 to explain the statement that God is one when the teacher brought up the subject. He was close to the kingdom of God by way of sincerity, but did not arrive at truth in the way that Jesus' listeners did when Jesus explained the duality of that oneness by quoting Psalms 110, 1-4, and its relationship to the Messiah being before David and not his son. The question of Daniel 8:13, how it points the finger at Rome and later targets the correct time frame of the abomination of Matthew 24:15 as to how to escape. The year-day principle in relation to the 1260, 1290, and 1335 during the transgression of desolation era, and Daniel 12's literal application in days at the end of the age. The literal countdown from the final 3.5 years of human history up to the 1335 days when one will be blessed, since Christ will come at the culmination of the 1335. The transition point regarding the end of Catholicism, Revelation 17:16, and the commencement of the rule of the 8th king, Revelation 17:12-16, and Revelation 18:4, 17:10, and 17:11. 7 Noahides was functional when Jesus was on trial, and he quoted Daniel 7:13. The reply was, "We have heard the blasphemy." 7 Noahides was functional when Stephen was stoned and beheld Jesus at the right hand of the Father. The throne of the Ancient of Days on fire, since equals it was in fact the hour of his judgment, whereas the great white throne in Revelation was not on fire, equals God's character vindicated at the end of the final atonement. See Revelation 15:8. Hiram Edson's vision in the cornfield validates the transfer of Jesus' holy place corporate ministration over to the Day of Atonement. Here lays the fundamental aspect for the veracity of Adventism as an Israelite religious system of truth based on the 5 agendas of the sanctuary. The northern sector of the universe is the place where Lucifer wanted to obtain knowledge in order to be like the Most High. Modern theological folklore refers to this place as the void. It is said to be energetic, but it must be kept in mind that all things were created through him, equals Christ, and for him, and that would include the energetic void. The discovery of Jupiter Dolichanes as the god of forces and fortresses, and the link between this nature god and the tense of Mazim equals energetic forces of nature, universe religion of emanationism as presented in the RCC, whose eternal Son teaching is based on the universe religion, which carries over into the last days of Earth's history from Neoplatonism into the Kabbalah book, and finally the cube religion of Saturn in relation to Psalms 83. The Vatican City has always carried the seeds of Luciferianism. Comment. A lot would agree equals Vaticanus equals hill of divination, witchcraft. A lot would disagree. They erroneously believe that Peter is the rock. Jesus is the rock, which is synonymous with the chief cornerstone that holds the whole structure together. The Scarlet Woman always had the Luciferian fear seeds, mystery, Babylon, mother of harlots. Yes, from the time of Constantine. The great red dragon is seed tares sower equals appears to be in conjunction with Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus was Mithras. Read Invictus as epithet. The whole system of emanations from the void universe relates to Satan's fall from the void. Here is a feature discovered by 5 agendas that is missing from the occult theological system, which originally was an anthropomorphic fall of Satan and his angels and was later converted into the descent of souls equals eternal sons from the void universe. The seducing Lucifer seeds of Mystery Babylon the Great are the doctrine of eternal generation and the eternal son doctrine. Later, Laodicea played the harlot of her doctrinal mother and made those Lucifer seeds their official doctrine. How? With acceptance of the Luciferian fear seeds equals fundamentals 2 and 4, all the while wanting to be the same as the daughters of harlotry, but that was not her original heritage Laodicea was born into. Laodicea's heritage was never the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies. But it is now. The RCC was never the mother of Laodicea. Laodicea was raised by way of the antitype of the ancient sixth feast, thus linking her with John 4:22. Yes, Laodicea borrowed the Lucifer seeds from the mother of harlots and was adopted, thus becoming a sister-daughter to fall of Babylon. What made the seeds of Lucifer grow? The tares? The love gospel. And all the world in lure of unity worshiped the beast, the unclean lips. The first angels heralds the basis of the cleansing of the Day of Atonement. Then there is Revelation 7, the sealing time. And who is able to stand? Revelation 6:17. Without sealing of God in the sealing time, one cannot stand otherwise. Revelation 9:4-8 is false. The seal of God in Revelation 14:1 equals Revelation 3:12. To stand when? In the time of the 1260 plus 30 plus 45. Without the seal of 2 fathers equals Revelation 7. One will be cut down. Ezekiel 9. Just as she said. The outgrowth of the seeds of Lucifer's equals Ezekiel 8 in type, where weeping for Tammuz, the lure of Tammuz, Ezekiel 8:14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz, equals Lucifer worship, equals 1290 little days of Revelation 13. Laodicea cannot resolve the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies, equals that Lucifer worship, equals fundamentals 2 and 4. Their emphasis on love made it a reality. The lure is like a sedative. The deceptive Megans achieved the impossible. The once faithful city became a harlot. One might notice that when Jesus declared himself to be the rock, equals the foundation, therefore, not Peter, there was the power to loosen and bind, equals power of the church. This was followed by Jesus telling the church that they possessed the keys of the kingdom, Matthew 16:19, and that was in the first century. The problem is that Jesus said it that way, since this statement would eventually unveil the eternal Son through the false understanding or concept of Peter, and would also define the remnant church with possessing the key of David by way of Jesus being the chief cornerstone and not Peter. Mark 12 elaborates on the key of David, since this chapter reveals a microcosm of what will take place in the near future. The issue not sealed in the sealing time of 144 was the false one God interpretation of the Shema, by way of the example of the sincere guy in Mark 12, who was not far from the kingdom on account of his exposition of the one God, yet still wrong, and who was corrected quite subtly by Jesus around verse 35. The issue then, as today, is the key of David equals the Alpha and the Omega, which is who was the one before David, who is the one after David? Answer, he who made the Alpha and the Omega. And the common people rejoiced with this insight about the key of David. The key of David is preserved by the metaphor of the true olive tree with the rich root, Romans 11:17. And central to this rich root theme of the key of David is eternal righteousness, as seen in and is Genesis 1:26, Exodus 23:21-3, Joshua 5:13, Isaiah 9:6-7, John 1:1, Isaiah 53, Daniel 9's 70 weeks equals everlasting righteousness ushered in, Revelation 13:8. Includes Isaiah 44:6, Genesis 11:7 at Babel. Let us go down. Psalms 110, 1-4, the original usage for the word Elohim. And from these several examples covered or to be covered by 5agendas.com, one can now accurately explain eternal righteousness of he who made in the context of Romans 11. Yes, all adjuncts provide full insights and light unto Revelation 7 and the seal of God.